If you're dating someone dismissive avoidant, you probably know that they have a deep fear of commitment. And this is probably why it's so hard sometimes to date avoidant, because we want to connect, we want to develop the relationship, and they pull back, they disappear, they are scared of the future. I used to be dismissive avoidant, and in this video, I'm going to share with you the work that I've done in order to overcome this fear of commitment. I will show you how you can help them to actually overcome this fear and finally experience the relationship that they deserve, that you deserve, the secure relationship that we should all have, that we can actually all develop if we have the right tools. When I was preparing this video, I thought of what would be the image of commitment. And to me, commitment, especially if I ask my old self, the one who was scared of commitment, how would that look like? And for me, it was like kind of a knight who'd really be committed to his queen, his king. I live in London, so in the UK we have a king. And this idea of devotion, this idea of investment, it's also this idea of I have a goal, I have a mission, and I'm going to stick to this goal. I'm going to stick to this objective. The duty. We commit to this, I agree to this, and I will make the necessary effort to stick with it. And also, if you think about the definition of commitment, is this element of putting things aside, whether it's time, money, effort, for this purpose. In other words, being really focused on one mission, on one element. And when you look at this, especially if you don't have an avoidant attachment style, you start thinking like, hold on, that's actually a lot of work to be committed. Because you don't feel like this necessarily when you are secure or you have an anxious attachment style. For you, commitment is just like, we're in love, we want this to continue, and therefore we commit into the relationship. But for an avoidant partner, that's different. You see all this list of things you need to do, things you also need to get rid of. And that's the problem when it comes to commitment. And so when I reflected creating this slide, I realized 4 things that were preventing me from committing. The first element is this idea of if I choose something, this means I'm not so sure about whether it's the right decision, but also whether that in the future might be the optimal decision. So it's called the maximizer paradox. Because we really want to be like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, we never really make decision. The second element, which is the first thing that I realized when I started therapy, is this idea of I was always in the present time, always what we call the present bias. Of anytime you would ask me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't have a freaking clue. It was very hard for me. And when you think about a relationship, of course you need to project. Of course you need to anticipate things when you have kids, etc., etc. And so, otherwise, it was very hard for me to be in a committed relationship, to think about having kids, when I would not even think about what would happen the following week. It's also something you can learn from if you are anxious, but actually, how can we put ourselves more into the present time? So this is also a sign that there's a lot of unhealed trauma and insecurities, because it's usually kids are very much in the present time. So if you're stuck with these present biases, it's a sign that you're still very immature emotionally. The third one is around the dependence. If I commit, if I invest, you depend on me and I depend on you. And when this happens, I am scared that I will lose my status, that I will lose myself in this relationship. Assuming that compromise, because sometimes you need to compromise in a relationship, it means losing yourself. It means that you have to be someone you're not. And for avoidant, that's a no-go. Actually, it's more subtle than that, and I'll explain in a second. Because if you have an anxious attachment style, and you start a relationship thinking it needs to work at all costs, and I shouldn't allow myself to be myself, to express my needs because I need the relationship, That's also not healthy anyway. And the last element, which I think most of people are not aware of this, because from the outside we might appear confident, self-assured, etc., is this idea of self-worth. Is this idea of I need to put people away. Because if I commit, if I disclose who I am, they'll make fun of me. It's kind of an imposter syndrome type of thing, which is very typical for avoidant. Now, with regard to commitment, there's a good and a bad news. Let me explain in a second. If you're watching this and wondering if you have any chance of getting back with your ex, or even if it's the right thing to do, I've created a free assessment that gives you clarity. It's based on attachment science, and it will show you whether your ex is still emotionally engaged, if reconnection is possible, and how ready you are mentally and emotionally. What you have to do is just answer a few questions, and you'll get a personalized breakdown within 2 minutes. You can find the link of this assessment below in the description. The good news, their fear of commitment has nothing to do with you or what you said or what you've done. The good news is it's a response from unhealed wounds. Right? So as I said, we draw a picture in our mind around commitment that implies that it's difficult, that it's hard, that it's a lot of downsides. We focus on the downside of the commitment. The good news is that attachment style is not set in stone. It can change. I worked at being more secure. My clients, whether they're avoidant or anxious, have worked at being more secure. It's not a question of can we be secure? No, it's something that has been studied for many years. You can be secure. It doesn't have to take years of therapies like I did. In a couple of months, you can actually experience a secure attachment style. That's the good news. Now, the bad news, it's not so much about you. It's not so much about what you've done. The bad news is that it's a response of their unhealed wounds. Do you see where I'm coming from? The bad news is attachment is not set in stone. It can change. It's about the work that your partner will invest, will put in. Right? Because yes, this is not set in stone. Yes, things can change. Yes, we can explain things. The problem is, what's your role in this? How can you ensure that they actually feel safer within this element of commitment? And so there's a lot of avoidant bashing on my channel, and I don't blame you. Yes, in an ideal world, if you could choose a secure partner. Studies have shown that, yes, you're more likely to be satisfied by your relationship if you're in a secure relationship. To be fair, secure, insecure works exactly the same way as secure. But there, obviously, it makes sense. Especially if you have an anxious attachment style, find someone secure. You'll probably be happier, all things equal, than if you're dating an avoidant. Okay, but what do we do with that? If you're watching this video, you want to fight, you want to repair, you have feelings for this person, and I would never argue against that. You are in love with this person, you want to work things out, you know they mean well, and actually, them being an avoidant is not a reason to break up, it's not a reason to give up, right? I was lucky enough to meet women who were empathetic and understanding, and recently my wife. So being an avoidant is not a red flag in that sense. Again, if right now you feel exhausted, you feel betrayed, you feel you don't have the motivation anymore, yeah, let go, move on and find someone secure. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not necessarily the right solution. My approach is really about those 4 sort of steps. It's about, first of all, calming your system. If you have an anxious attachment style, It's about managing ways to regulate your emotions. And then it's about reprogramming your model. In attachment theory, you call that working models. It's about this idea of you have a certain beliefs around intimacy, around relationship. The problem is when you date someone avoidant, they have the opposite view and you keep on triggering each other. Once you've done those two things, so you have strong emotional regulation tool, you've developed a secure attachment style. This is when you can expose yourself to your partner. This is where you can test whether this element of commitment is still daunting, is still scary, is still overwhelming for your partner. And then, and only then, you are able to answer the question, are you wasting time? Does it make sense to work things out with this person? I want to have kids, I want to get married. Is it a question of my insecurities or is it a question of their insecurities? If you do the work on your part and you're secure and you're exposing yourself, your secure self to this person, if they still have a fear of commitment, it's not so much about what you do. Remember the bad news, they could do the work. It's their job to do it. Now, avoidance, they have a deep need to also be attached to their partner, to their primary attachment figure. So, regardless of their background, their history, their upbringing, they should have a part of themselves who would want and desire to have that relationship. I remember I would idealize the relationship. I would not do the work and implement the necessary steps to have the relationship. I would only keep the upsides of the relationship, but I would idealize the relationship. And that's probably what your partner is experiencing, or if you're avoidant, that's probably what you experienced before. I like the idea of a relationship, but when it becomes serious, when it's about commitment, when it's about choice, I feel scared because I feel there's so much I have to give, there's so much I have to lose as part of this relationship. So the way it works is creating a secure base. This is an extract from my book. Yes, most of the time, the anxious partners needs to make the first step, needs to initiate, needs to be the role model. So if you're watching this video and you're the anxious partner of the relationship, okay, it doesn't matter, do the work and try things out. Yes, you lead the way, but at some stage, it's also where you need to gain that clarity. Because a lot of people, they feel, oh, my ego is taking the lead. I've heard somewhere that I should never even reach out, that I shouldn't make the effort because it's their decision, because it's their attachment. Yes, but then you're stuck. So again, it's about pushing towards clarity. So once you're more confident, once you have this emotional regulation in place, once you know more about how to behave, about their trigger points, you'll feel more secure. You are able to create a secure base. And when you create that secure base, your avoidant partner, in the majority of the cases, will respond positively. They will be inspired by this new dynamic, by this new behavior. They will start opening up, sharing their emotion. They won't feel smothered by your closeness because you'll be able to manage those elements of on and off, because you will break away from codependency and create interdependence in this relationship. This is how it works. So it's step number 3. Step number 2 is about how you initiate, but I didn't want to spend 2 hours on this video just to give you the methodology of what I do with my clients and what I've actually experienced in the past myself. So how can we tame the fear? How can we, because it's all about the unknown. We are scared of things we don't know. The problem in anxious avoidant dynamic is that we all want safety, but the safety is not the same. You want, if you have an anxious attachment style, you want reassurance, you want validation. What they want alone time. They want peace. They want to be able to get back and do their own thing. And as I described before, there's a space. Maybe there's no space, but you have to assess whether by creating that space, your partner will meet you there in that secure base where you can both thrive. There's sometimes this assumption of like, we are too far apart and things can't work out. When you have this assumption, it's usually because you have deep insecurities that you need to deal with. As soon as you develop a secure attachment style and you implement this, your partner will respond positively. If you create the right environment, you will be able to solve things together. And the problem people have, the reason they're stuck, there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of things about how you see the world, expecting your partner to see the world the same way you see the world. That's why I called you need to develop pragmatic empathy, which means about understanding who you are, being fully aware of your limitation, of your triggers, of your history, being able to express this to your partner, and also in return, have them to also do the work by understanding their limitation and expressing their limitation. Because it's not because they're avoidant that they can't express things, right? At the end of the day, if they are curious, if they want to connect, if they want to make you, invest in the relationship in the sense of just want you to be happy and give back in the relationship, they will overcome that fear. If you have any questions on this, let me know. I'm launching a program in August, or relaunching a program, opening the doors to a new program where we actually do this. We help you feel calmer. We reset and reprogram your limited beliefs, your working models. We expose yourself. So it's not only therapy sessions, but it's also coaching about how you can communicate with your partner, how we can create a secure base together, and then decide. Maybe you're the only one who wants to commit in a relationship. And if your partner doesn't want to give you what you need and what you want, this is not the right partner because it's not the right relationship. And you have to let go, and it's very simple to let go if you do the work. So if you need any detail on this, have a look in the description. I'm opening door. I think there will be only 10 seats because it's August and I'm a bit on holidays in August in France. If you have any questions other than that, let me know in the comment section. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.